From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosa Bianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, you ever go to one of those parties and you kind of tell from the moment you walk into the room it's going to be a good party? This is going to be a good podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Nico Lagan from the lovely Montreal, vis-a-vis his RV, traveling the four corners of this wonderful, wonderful country of ours, except this tiny little problem in the US of A and North America at whole. Somehow, Nico has identified that masculinity is under attack. So Nico, explain to us what's going on with this attack on masculinity, why it's bad for our culture, and ultimately small business, because that's who's listening. Welcome to the podcast, Nico.
Thanks for having me on. It's a loaded question because there's a few ways I could answer it, but if I go all out, it's all a matter of control. Men are the first and last line of defense against everything. We are meant to serve, we're meant to protect, we're meant to be there for our families, we're meant to be selfless, we're meant to be a protector, we're meant to take care of the people around us. Look at the society that we have today. It was meant and built by men that sacrifice blood, their life, sweat. We are born servers and we build societies in which our families can thrive no matter what it means to us. And this is why the United States, North America is the way it is now. But if your plan is control, everything's about control, right? Everybody exert controls over everybody else. So if the plan is to control as many people as you want weak men. You don't want men that are ready to do what it needs to get done when it needs to get done, because that means those are dangerous people to deal with. Take me, for example. I've spent the last 20 years in martial arts. I know how to defend myself. I fought as an amateur. I know how to defend myself physically against multiple attackers with knife, with guns, with baseball bat. I know how to defend myself. I know how to defend my family. I don't want to use this. I'm the one that does not want to fight, but don't push me in a corner. Don't back me up, because I know how to do so. And I will do whatever it takes to protect my family.
Nico, let me give you an anecdote, and then we could just see where the conversation goes, right? Like years ago, like these military enrollment offices used to be pretty busy for whatever reason, whether it was the GI Bill, whether it was the perks, whether it was that 20 years of service, and then you had a nice cushy retirement. For whatever reason, this is no longer the case. Young men don't feel it's their duty to give back to society and to defend this country for whatever reason. Is that also part of this attack on masculinity?
That's what happens when you're raised by men that are not men. That's basically what we're seeing right now. You take me, for example. My dad left when I was 14 years old. Even prior to him leaving, he was not present. So he's never been there to show me what a man was. And for 6 to 7 years, I did everything from dropping out of school, to doing drugs, to being an addict, to being an alcoholic, to selling drugs to support my habits, to be extremely selfish. I've heard a lot of people around me. I was not a good person. I did not care about anybody else except my needs, what I wanted. This is what you're seeing right now. There's levels, obviously, there's levels to which people go, but the selflessness, more and more people out there are selfish. More and more people are just no accountability whatsoever. A lot of people out there are narcissists. A lot of people just care about themselves. Look at every single problem we face as a society today. It boils down to one thing: accountability. Show me a problem, I'll show you somebody somewhere that's not ready to do their job, that's being a victim, that's blaming others for their problems. And this is what's happening. So we have fathers now that are victims, that are raising a bunch of victims. And not only that, but As per study, it ranges from 25 to 40%, depending on the study you look at, but let's call it 30% of boys right now are being raised in a household without their father. So
Nico,
we're literally we're a bunch of men that have been raised. Tyler Durden from Fight Club speaks about this. We are a generation of men that were raised by women. Is women really the solution to our problems? No. The solution to our problem are manly men. There's a good reason why throughout history there's been rites of passages. Whatever culture you look at, there are rites of passages, and men, older men, more mature men, teach younger men what it is to become a man, because men are always valued on what they bring to the table. If this is one of the main differentiator between women and men. Girls become women when they're capable of procreating. Boys become men when they're capable of bringing something to the table. You're always judged as per your value. What do you bring to the table is what matters to men. Boys are born, men are made through trials and tribulations. And to answer your question, is this what I'm talking about is a fact, and it's been a fact throughout history. The problem today is that men don't want that responsibility because it's hard. It's a lot easier to be a woman today than it is a man, because we take care of our woman. Men don't protect women because they are weak. We protect women because they matter, because we care, because we love them. We're ready to sacrifice our life to protect others. This is not a welcome responsibility if you're a victim and you don't believe in accountability. And this is what we see today. So you look at the military, for example, there's a lot of the things that the military does that I don't believe in. All my family's military. I don't believe in going into other countries and invading them for their natural resources. But when it comes to protecting your country, this is something every man out there should be ready to do.
I absolutely agree with you. I think people in society, yes, men have become soft, right? Over the years. I mean, if we look back, when I grew up in the 80s, we had role models. You had Chuck Norris, you had Stallone, you had Mr. T, you had Van Damme. These guys were men. They jumped out of helicopters. They did what they needed to do. And then if you look at the way Hollywood's portrayed stuff moving forward, we can't really talk about this. We can't do this anymore. You couldn't make up your own opinions of men. And I think that's possibly part of the reason why everybody's gotten soft.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. It's indoctrination. It takes time to make it happen. If you look at the 80s and the 90s, I was born in the 80s too. It was normal for boys to be around other boys. And this is another problem we see today. If you look, I was talking about rites of passages, and we don't have any more. We don't have them anymore. You look at the only one that we had left, which was the Boy Scouts, is now filled with little girls too. Like, it is no longer boys only. Somehow women have infiltrated Boy Scout because it would be sexist for us to not have them. And that's the whole point. The whole point's to be sexist. Is for boys need to be around other boys. If I thank God that my mother recognized in me a long time ago that I had too much energy. That today if I was raised today, I'd be pumped with ADHD medication because I never stopped moving. I'm 42 years old. Well, I'm going to be 42 years old. I have a six-pack. I work out 5 times a week. I eat properly. I'm always moving. And this has been true since I can remember, my whole life. But I deal with that aggressivity. I deal with that energy by being physically active. Put me in front of a guy that has martial art experience, I guarantee you we're going to play fight. There's no doubt about it. Put me around a guy, and I don't drink, so I don't need to be, it's not an alcohol thing. It's just two dudes being dudes. Boys fight, boys play fight. We test each other. And some of the most respect that I have for people are people I fought in a ring because they had the balls to stand up against me when I was trying to rip their head off. That takes balls. And unfortunately today, that's not something that a lot of men are ready to do. But we shouldn't be castrated for this. So I shouldn't be castrated for saying that boys should not be treated like little girls because they are not little girls. Boys are boys. They need to play outside. They need to play with each other. They need to be able to fight each other. You know what? Men sometimes need to fight. If we have a problem that cannot be argued with words anymore, we need to fight. When the fight's done, it's done. And that's it. Like, that's what it was in the 80s and prior to that.
Nico,
Men fought.
Nico, it's biological. I
Yeah.
I come home at night and my little infant boy runs to me and just wants to tumble
Yup.
because he's pushing the boundaries, he's pushing the parameters. How far can he go before he gets hurt or he doesn't get hurt, right? So by learning those boundaries and having that I guess that barometer. So I guess as a dad, I'm his barometer. How far can he go before dad says, all right, take it easy? And that kind of helps him assimilate into society, into culture. Whereas mom is a bit more nurturing and loving and don't do this, right? So that's the contrast between the male role model and the female role model. So,
And that's
Nico,
exactly how we should be. Now you're describing what we call gender roles. Gender roles exist and they are real. Women are supposed to teach their kids about emotional intelligence, compassion, being kind, what it is to be loved, so that later on in life they can love their woman, they can love their kids. This is a woman's job to teach their sons how to show love and how to receive love. Men are supposed to teach them discipline. What is it to be a man? Understand that it's going to be hard. Understand that you might have to do a lot of physical things. Guess what? You're bigger, you're stronger, your bone density is higher, your twitch muscles are faster. You're meant to do physical things.
and assemble furniture.
Especially IKEA, yeah. Of course. But you know exactly what I'm saying, right? They are gender roles and they need to be embraced. This
Nico,
is another thing.
in your journey, you took accountability.
Mhm.
Walk us through, like, what was your epiphany where you realized, okay, no excuses about pointing fingers. I'm going to be accountable for my actions and I'm going to be a big boy. How did that happen?
So my dad left, I was 17. Within a year and a half, I dropped out of school. Within a year after that, I wasn't living with my mother anymore. I was a drug addict. I was an alcoholic. I was selling drugs. That is all I would do. This was my life. I was hanging out with guys that were older than me, that were role models, what I thought were role models, because I was a big fan of gangster rap back then. And so I hung out with guys that were part of gangs. I hung out with guys that lived the life I wanted to live. And guess what? That's what you happen doing. And in my early 20s, I was sitting in my apartment, which was the third apartment I was getting evicted in about 4 years. Because all I did is party. I didn't care about my neighbors. I didn't care anybody. I was not a good tenant. Let's just be honest here. And I believe in God. I'm a Christian, and I don't believe that anything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. It's just up to you to figure out why. And I've never had the best relationship with my mother. We've grown apart over the years, and it was like that before because I was hard to handle. She couldn't handle me. And at one point she just said, "You know what? I give up." But for some reason, I'm sitting in my apartment, I'm getting evicted again. All my stuff is in boxes, and I don't know what I'm doing. I have no clue where I'm going next. I have an opportunity I like to say that it was a promotion because I had been proposed, instead of selling, to start producing drugs. But that opportunity needed a bit more time to mature. Like, I met the proper guys. It was in the works. But at that point, I had no place to stay. I was becoming homeless. And for some reason, my mother felt the need to call me. So one phone call, I'm sitting there among my boxes, and my mother asked me a very simple question: "Are you happy?" And she followed up by saying, "If you're not, you can come back home. I can't, you're not going to stay here and do nothing. You're going to have to go back to school. You're going to have to do something. I can't pay for it, but I can pay for a roof over your head." And you know what? Until then, that was never something that occurred I never thought about this. I never thought that was an option. And that day, that night, I moved back to my mother's place. I literally didn't speak to all of my friends for probably 10 years. I started now reaching out as I get bigger and bigger on social media. Some of my friends reach out that we used to hang out, but on that day, I stopped seeing all the people that were still involved in my past life. And I started attending AA meetings. I started attending Narcotic Anonymous meeting. Within a few months, there was no drug, no alcohol. I didn't smoke anymore. I wasn't in contact with anybody else. Within span of 2 years, I had finished my high school, and I had graduated from a technical college as a computer technician. And I discovered the gym when I was in college. Right after college, I discovered martial arts. Within the span of 8 years, I went from answering the phone in a internet support line to being a sales engineer selling $1 million contracts. So my whole life has been that day that I decided to leave that stuff behind and move back to my mother was taking 2 steps behind. No, or sorry. So, like I'm taking 2 steps behind. I'm like, oh man, what am I gonna? But it's 1 step behind, 2 steps forward. So, yeah, I say this to people all the time. You need to be in a situation where you hit rock bottom. People don't change just to change. It never happens. If you look at the people that are successfully changing their lives, they've hit rock bottom so hard that the pain of remaining the same is too much. It is less painful to change than it is to remain the same. And unfortunately, human beings are lazy. We don't change because we like changing. We change because we need to evolve, or else we're going to die.
Nico, do you look back on those years with anger and resentment, or do you look back on those years as like that was actually a wonderful opportunity and you made lemonade out of lemons?
Never angry at my past. Zero. When I was younger, I was very angry at my dad for leaving, but now it's my purpose. That's all I do. So I took a weakness, I took something that I missed and changed it into my life purpose. So I have zero regret. There's nothing I regret.
What you wound up doing was you changed your identity first.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
That's and that changed the outcome. I think most people want the outcome, but they're not willing to change their identity. And what that means is who they hang around, how they think of themselves, more importantly, to get them to move forward.
You are the sum of the 5 people closest to you.
100%.
If the people you hang out like to party every weekend, guess what? Chances are you're going to party too. But if you hang out with people that are a lot richer than you, a lot more educated than you, and a lot more mature, a lot more knowledgeable than you, guess what? That's exactly what you're going to become. So it's really, there's no easy way out. There's no easy way around this. And again, this is the problem. Most people don't want to do the work. Most people like the idea of changing. Most people like the idea. There's 1,000 people online that talks about this every day that have $1 million followers. People listen to them, but how many of them actually do the work? Less than 1%, maybe 1% if you're lucky, because they're not hurting enough. Because the comfort zone's a killer. They make enough money to be happy, to be what they believe is to be happy, and they stick to it because it's too hard to change. Look at me, for example. 16 months ago, I quit my corporate job as a sales engineer. I could have made 300 to 400 grand a year. Like, I was in line to get a job at Amazon. So this is as good as it gets in my field. Like in telecommunication, this is as good as it gets. So I could have made 300-400 grand a year. I quit all of that, refinanced my house, and left Canada on faith. I had no idea what I was going to do. No clue. All I knew is that I could not continue doing what I was doing because this is not what my life purpose is.
So were you on social media prior to 16 months ago?
Yeah.
Or did you really start going all in on social media over the last 16 months as you were trying to find your purpose?
100%. This is really, years ago, about 3.5 years ago, I started a podcast, and it was during the pandemic. Like, as a sales engineer, I used to go to customer meetings every day, like wear the suit, and that's all I did. And in Canada, the restrictions were brutal, so we needed to stay home, and all my meetings were online. So I'm like, man, I can't continue doing this. I need to do something else. So what are my skills? I looked at my skills and I'm like, what's my transferable skills? As a salesperson, I do presentations every day. So I'm like, being in front of the camera makes sense. And you know, when I said that there's no coincidences, years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I first started a job, and one of the guys I worked with looked at me. He's like, "Hey, bro, have you ever been on TV?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "You should." And it's interesting because over the past 16 months, I've been on TV, I've been on radio shows, I do podcasts all the time, I produce my own. I've grew my social media following from 0 to over 100,000 followers, and I can tell you that this is just a start. But I just chose to apply myself to something. Has it been the easiest decision I've ever made? No, it's the hardest one. You wouldn't understand how much struggle we've been through, my girlfriend and I, over the past 6 months, trying to figure this out when things are not going your way, when we're barely starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I spent a lot of money over the past 16 months to try to figure out, where was I going, how was I going to do it, how do social media work? Because there's a lot of people out there that speaks about social media. There's nobody that speaks about how social media works for a guy that prones masculinity. You know how they do it? They spend millions and millions and millions of dollars in ads. That's all they do, because the social media algorithms are not for them; they're against them. I did not have that type of resource. Like, you look at a Patrick Bet David, for example. I've been in contact. I've worked with one of the guys that built a social media platform. And I asked him, I'm like, how did he do it? He's like, it's simple. He sold his company before he started talking. It's only since he lost his company, he's had a bunch of money in the bank, that he's like, I can speak about whatever I want, because he has the money to back it up. Mm-hmm. But it's a hard lesson, because social media don't like you. They don't like guys like me. So I'm always shadow banned somewhere.
So Nico, how are you preparing for that? Because you're in an environment, and you're carrying a message that may not be well received, right? So there's a possibility that you'll get banned and you'll get boycotted, and they're going to throw some paint on you. So how do you start a business with that expectation in mind?
It's called faith.
Beautiful.
Again, I'm a Christian. Like, I wasn't 16 months ago, but over the past year, I found I really got involved with God. I've been spiritual for 12 years. I was a Buddhist prior to that. So it's not like I didn't believe in God, but now I run 100% on faith. As hard as it gets, I just get on my knees and I pray that, you know what, God, I'm doing what you want me to do. Nobody said it would be simple, but it's going to be impactful.
Nico, it seems like you and I have something in common. We chose polar opposites as partners. Tell us a little bit about the Nico Lagan podcast and about your new podcast partner.
Well, let me talk about two, because I run two podcasts now. Like, there's one I started about a month and a half ago called Men Helping Men, and 8 minutes long. It varies from 7 to 9 minutes. I've recorded probably 40 episodes up to now. I have 3 this afternoon, but the goal is to have men that are helping other men get better, get them on the show. I don't care what you do. You could be a coach, you could be a minister, you could be whatever. Don't matter. If you're trying to help other men be better men, I want you on the show. And I ask one single question: what's the most valuable lesson you've learned, and how did it change your life? You got 5 minutes to answer. I ask you another question at the end, and then we're done. It's 8 minutes long. So this is one of the ones that I'm doing, and I just started it, and it's actually starting to get tractions. Like, I'm not surprised, but it's really doing well. But that one is not about me. It's really about using my platforms that I've built over the past year and a half and give it away to guys that don't have millions of views on their content every month. Like, I want to help people out there, and this is one of the ways I can serve others. The Nico Lagan show's been going on for years. It's something that I took a break off because it's extremely demanding. Like, I used to do 4 episodes a week, so it was extremely, extremely demanding. And they take 3 to 4 hours of preparation per episode. Like, I don't show up just to show up. I'm an extremely researched individual. And a buddy of mine called Tarek Higgins we've been wanting to work together for a while. We did, to a certain extent. Like, we did a few podcasts together, but now we kind of revamped it in a way that we're just going to do it live. So we want, because this is when we do our better work, him and I, is just go live. I don't care about how it's going to sound, how people are going to receive it. It's really him and I talking about what's going on right now. So we're both extremely political. So we're going to talk about politics, what's going on right now over the past week. And we're going to approach subjects that are not subject that people want to talk about, like what it is to be a Black conservative in 2024 is the first episode we're doing tomorrow. Next week, we're going to talk about what it is to be a conservative, a Christian conservative versus being an atheist that's a Republican, because he's a Black atheist Republican. So those are the type of subjects that we're going to talk about. And we want to take questions from people. This is when we do our best work. Like, I want to talk to people. I want to talk with my followers. I want to talk to people that don't agree with me. I want to convince them, or at least have the discussion with them, that their opinions is not the only one that's out there.
Nico, what do you think has happened in North America over the last, let's call it 5 to 10 years? Politically speaking, there was not such a big gap between left and right, right? So
Obama.
Really? You think this is on the way of Obama?
100%. I never thought about this before until about a week ago. Tarek, him and I were talking about how we restart the podcast, and he's like, do you know that everything that's happening right now started with Obama? The feminization of men started with Obama. If you look at it, all the legislations that were put in place when it comes to LGBTQ, WWX, ZZ, whatever comes out after, all started with Obama. It is really under him that everything that's social justice for gender rights have been pushed. And it's insane because it's not that long ago. We're talking Obama took power in 2008. That's insane when you think about it, how much the past 10 years, just the past 5 years, how much has changed. But it has changed because men are feminized and men will not stand for what they believe in. I'm not the only one that thinks like I do. 80% of men out there do. They just don't have the balls to say it. I had to quit my job in order to talk about this. This is exactly, this is what I had to do, right? I had to quit my job in order to be in front of a microphone saying what I'm saying right now, because I would have got fired no matter what. They would have never accepted a guy that represents such a large company to talk the way I talk. And it's unfortunate because right now we're getting blasted by the two ends of the spectrum. So if you look at the bell curve, about 65 to 70% of the people are somewhere in the middle. They're just like, we're hearing the both extremes and we're like, we're too busy to deal with it. And this is what happened over the past 10, 14 years. Men have been too busy with their jobs, with their lives, with their families. And we hope that kids' behavior like we're seeing today would end. But unfortunately, it got worse because there was no discipline, there was no action or no consequences to their actions.
I think I could argue it goes back a little bit further than Obama. I mean, yes, there's an attack on masculinity, but no, I think there's been an attack on the nuclear family for a very long time in this country that started
70s.
in the 60s and the 70s. Correct.
What I meant to say, and I'm sorry to cut you off, what I meant to say is that he's the one that pushed it.
Yes.
Prior to that, it was just societal. When he came into power, he made legislations in order to enforce it. It was not just societal ideas to say this is how it should be. No. After him, he put pen to paper and he made it law.
If you look back and you see the way college indoctrination places, right, came about was 60s and 70s, immigrants' families came over, they started a business. Everybody in that household worked in that business. Right? It didn't matter if you were 3 years old, you were bagging something up till you were 50. And that's how wealth was created in this country, because families stuck together. Right. And then these ideas came about of, well, you don't need the family. Go off on your own. Go off on your own. That nuclear family wound up breaking down. Right. And then I flash forward to where we are now. It's now they're breaking down the masculine part of that family.
The governments became a lot of single women's husband.
Yes.
This is what we've been telling our women that men are only good for one thing, money. And then the government steps in and says, you know what? It's okay. We'll give you money if you're a single woman. what's the incentive of a woman to stay with a man if she doesn't have to deal with it? Because think about it. If, as a man, if you want to have children today, you're going to have to pay for it somehow. It's going to, you know that you're stepping into a very bad potential situation. You have no power. Like 70 to 90% of divorces are initiated by women depending on their education level. 70% high school educated, 90% if they're university educated. 90% of the cases, they get the children. That means that as a man, if half of the divorce rate is half, give or take right now. So that means that if you marry a woman, you have 50% chances that she's going to leave you. That means your wealth is gone. That means that your children in 90% of the cases are gone. This is what you're dealing with. You know, I posted something the other day that said, it wasn't even mine. I just took it, I copy pasted it, and I posted it. And basically what it says is men will give up their comfort in order to serve their families. Women will break up their families in order to get what they want. So when a woman is not happy today, because look at the dynamic. Now the relationship between men and women are not fair because men have to stay. If they want to be with their kids, they have to behave. Because if they leave, they will lose their kids. That's what the statistics are showing. Women, on the other hand, are like, you know what? If it doesn't work, if my relationship doesn't work, he doesn't give me exactly what I want, I'll just leave and find somebody else because I'll have his money and I'll leave with the kids. They have nothing to lose. So the dynamic is so messed up today that women have no incentive of staying in a relationship and men have no incentive in being in a relationship with women. If you're a man today that don't want kids, be single.
So
It's
Nico,
it's not worth it.
all right. So we're problem solvers. I mean, as men, that's what we want to do. What is your version, or what do you see as a solution being to this issue that we're dealing with right now?
Turning boys into men.
Just letting people get punched in the face?
100%. Unfortunately, you know, there's two. This is one of the big difference between left mentality and right mentality. There's two ways you can make change on a society. You can do what we call top down. So the government can have so much power that it will force people to change through law. If you don't do what we tell you, there will be consequences. Then there's a more conservative approach, a more traditional approach that says society is just a bunch of people that decide to live together. They decide they have the same values, they believe in the same things, so they agree to live together. How do you change a society? By changing the individual, because society is just a bunch of individuals together. So if you give good virtues to the people in your society, they will grow up to be good people that will care for more than just themselves. So you're building strong individuals. This is what we're lacking today. And this is why I talk about the 5 virtues of a good man. That's why my second book is on this. But this is how you do it. Unfortunately, top-down situation, a top-down approach can change societies extremely fast. 5 to 10 years. Look at our society where it was 10 years ago. Could you have believed? I like older movies. And when I say older movies, I'm not talking 70s. I'm talking just 2000s. Look at movies at the beginning of the 2000s, what they say. Compared to today, you're like, oh, balls. That would not fly anymore. There is no way in hell you could say that anymore. And we're talking not even 20 years ago. It's insane. But unfortunately, for a conservative approach, a more traditional approach, it takes a long time to do so. So things are going to get a lot worse before they get better.
But also like the cultural tastes change. And that could be like a good litmus test is where we are today. I mean, you look at a movie in the 50s, a married couple on cinema would have separate beds. Mm-hmm. You know, you had the Brady Bunch that was controversial in the 70s. You know, you had the Jeffersons that were controversial in the 80s. I mean, this is controversy. Now, to be controversial, you basically have to have sex with an animal on the screen. Like our barometer has gotten so high, and we're so accustomed to just lewdness. And I mean, forget about cursing. I mean, cursing is like PG-13 now. So how do we clean up society a little bit? So yes, there's a little bit of, you know, punching the guy in the face to learn a lesson, but
there's a good method right here. Right there. There's a set of instructions in here. that will show you exactly what you need to do.
That's a great manual, Nico.
Oh man, I have two right there. I have another one behind
For
me.
those of you that are listening and not watching, Nico just picked up the Holy Bible.
And you know what? Believe in Jesus Christ or not, that's on you. That's on you. But pick it up. Just pick it up and read it for what it is. Imagine that it's just a beautiful story. Let's say that it's all fake. Read it and see it as a psychological tell. This will tell you my goal this year is to read the Bible cover to cover. And I've been spending an hour or two every morning, and this is what I'm doing. And I'm studying it. I'm not reading it page per page and just going. No. I have a notepad next to me and I research everything. There are solutions in there for every single thing that you can think of. We're at Bible study. We're talking about Samuel right now. There's descriptions in Samuel that's going on right now. It's the exact same thing. Same consequences to our actions are going on in Samuel. That was written 3,000 years ago. We are cyclical. All we do, we're idiots. We do not learn from history. History is right there to teach us what we should and should not do.
It's human behavior, right? It's said that Shakespeare, in just a couple of stories, captured all of human emotion. So imagine what the Holy Bible does with a few parables, and especially speaking in parables and telling stories of parables, it resonates with people. Like Matt and I always use case studies, not because we're academics, but because it resonates with people. Like if you know that this worked for Nico, oh, well, it could also work for Joe.
And this is what I'm concentrating this year is how do I bring Christianity to the table without talking about Christianity? Because people hear Christianity, they automatically think about the church. They automatically think about
they think you're a Bible thumper. Yeah, so that's a smooth way to introduce these morality lessons without being a Bible thumper, because nobody wants the guy with the polyester pink suit and pinky ring.
Because, man, the 5 virtues of a good man: having courage, being a protector, a provider, having temperance, and having faith. I didn't invent those. That is a mix of Stoicism and the Holy Bible. This is all it is. I just reframed it in a way that's applicable to people today. But those are principles that have been taught for thousands of years. There's nothing new here. Call it whatever you want. Name it absolutely the way that you want. This is the way we are supposed to be. Our justice system in North America were based on the 10 Commandments.
Nico, you can't have the yin without the yang. Let's get personal for a second. What were the qualities in your girlfriend that attracted you to her, especially now that you're traveling cross country with her in limited quarters in an RV?
It all comes down to, it's interesting because her father is an Italian immigrant and her mother is first generation. So her grandmother is an immigrant from Italy as well. They have
you can never go wrong with those vowels.
No, and but that's the thing though. It is that they're more traditional in their values. They understand what it is to be a man. They understand what it is to be a woman. They understand that there are different things about being a woman and being a man. My girlfriend she wants kids. We do want kids, but she wants to be a mother. She doesn't want to delegate that task to somebody else. She wants to be a mother. She embraces motherhood. That's what she wants. So those are the values that I look for. I looked because it's taken me. We met later in life, and for a long time I had fun. Like I played the field. I experimented, if we can say it that way. And you know how many women I've met like her? One. Just one. That I felt that I could have a family with. That I knew that cared more about the family unit that she would herself. And this to me is what it comes down to. A man is supposed to serve his family. A mother is supposed to do the same thing, just in different ways. Study shows that in order for women to be great mothers, they need to feel secure. They need to feel in an environment that they are safe. Do you know who creates those spaces? Men. So men are not better than women. We just enable women to be mothers.
Nico, what's the destination for this RV? Where will you eventually park this bad boy?
No idea. No idea.
I love it.
We're in Alabama. I've driven this trailer probably 20,000 miles. Like we did 23 states over the past 16 months. Like we've done coast to coast. And we really like Alabama. Like our favorite, at least my favorite, Arizona. I would own a house in Arizona for the winter from like November to March so I can play golf and ride my motorcycle every day. And I would have probably another property in Tennessee. I'm a big fan of Tennessee, Alabama, love it. We're in the northern state. We're in Athens, Alabama right now, which is northern part of Alabama. I'm literally an hour and a half outside of Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville's great.
I love Nashville. Place. We spent a few months there. We loved Nashville.
It's amazing the growth of that city too. And you just see cranes everywhere.
They're in the middle. That's what I like about Tennessee. They're not right. They're not left. They're more libertarian, somewhere in the middle, just like I am. So I like the people there. Like we've traveled all over Tennessee, and it's a great, great place. You guys got really good places, but I would say Arizona, Tennessee, and Alabama are probably my three favorites.
Oh, Nico, don't get us wrong. Canada's beautiful. You have some beautiful cities, some beautiful land. The problem is you can only make left turns.
That is awesome. That is great. That is awesome. It's true, because I said that to multiple people. There is not one place right now outside of Arizona and Texas that I found that even came close to Canada when it comes to nature. Like there's nothing in the US right now that comes close to our nature. And the only reason I talk about Texas and Arizona is because there's sand, like they're deserts. We don't have that in Canada. So when we were there, you know how my mind was blown the first day I saw a 40-feet cactus. This made no sense to me. Like in Arizona, around Yuma, Arizona, which is connected to Mexico and California, they have forests of cactuses. That blew my mind. To just look on the side of the road and there's like thousands of cactuses. Imagine a normal forest in Canada, replace all the trees by cactuses and desert. Wow, that's what you're seeing. Never seen anything like it. But outside of that, you're absolutely right. It's unfortunate because our country, Canada, is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Nico, let's try to end this podcast on a positive note, right? Because not all that's going on today is negative. After all, there are guys like you that are pushing the envelope. Like I'm proud of my partner Matthew. He's moving the needle. He's a good father, great husband. If we take it for granted that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can turn things around, how do we maintain a discourse with, let's say, a young man who is pre-op, has pumped himself with hormones, is looking to transition, is changing his name from Jack to Joyce? How do we try to ingratiate and have a conversation with him before he hits rock bottom?
You can't.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do for him. You know, there's I need to learn her name, but there was a French woman that she decided to become a man. She went through the transition. She committed suicide 1.5 years after. She couldn't, and you can see her. There's a bunch of recordings of her where she's talking about how hard it is to be a man. Like women don't understand how easy it is to be a woman because we cater to them. But being a man, when you realize that men in general don't get approached by women, 40% of men never have children. Like that's insanity when you think about it. So could have anything I would have told her prior to her transitioning could have convinced her that I was right? Zero, nothing. If you're ready to chop your dick off and fill yourself with hormones blocker, there's nothing I can tell you that will convince you that I'm right. Nothing. The only thing you can do is to find out for yourself. And the statistics are starting to come in, and it is not pretty. Men transitioning to be women and vice versa is not pretty. the impact that this is going to have in 10, 20 years is going to be disastrous.
Well, Nico, if it's any consolation, about 100 years ago, doctors used to perform lobotomies. And now we realize, wow, those guys are crazy. So who knows? Maybe we'll come full circle and they'll realize the error in their ways.
I guess those people that had lobotomies had children. That might be the problem. There you go. That's the issue.
Maybe we got to go back to that. I think we got to go back to lobotomies. I think that's the answer. Hey, Nico, thank you so much for being here, man. We really appreciate it. I want to be respectful of your time. Can you just tell everybody about the Alpha Creator Blueprint and how they can get in touch with you and follow you online?
Yeah, absolutely. Just go to nicolagan.com. All my stuff is there, like anything from my blog, my books, my social media, everything I do is there. It's the Alpha Creator Blueprint is a program that I do with men that want to grow their social media platforms. Men that are trying to help other men out there. They're masculine men. They're not scared of political correctness. Those are the people that I help. Like, how do you go from what you have right now to having millions of views every month? Because no matter the business that you have, it really does not matter. Social media is the best marketing platforms that you can use. And if you're smart, it doesn't need to cost a lot of money. If you're smart, if you know how to do it organically. But there's a lot of coaching that needs to be done on how do you approach your social media. There's strategies, but there's also strategies on the person that speaks in front of the camera. Do you think I became comfortable speaking in front of a camera when I got up in the morning and it was done? Of course not. For 12 years, I studied psychology when I was a sales engineer. How do I create rapport with my customers? How do I interact with them in a way that will make them understand that I care about them? How do I mirror them? I have multiple NLP certifications just because I needed to get better at communicating with my customers. So those are also some of the stuff that I teach. Like, how do you create a hook? How do you create good videos? But who's your target audience? Where do you find them? Because I post on 8 different social media platforms every day, multiple times a day. Like Gary V style, I do it just like him. Because this is what needs to get done. If you want views, you need to create a whole lot of content. But strategy, and you need to develop your natural skills. What are you good at? And let's push the envelope. I don't believe in flaws. I believe in pushing your strength. If you have flaws, hire somebody that does it for you. But your strengths are what you need to embrace, and those are what's going to make you great. And that's what the Alpha Creator is all about. How do I get somebody to build the skills to be great in front of a camera? And then how do we strategize on the type of content, and where does it go?
And where can they find that course?
All on nicolagan.com. All of my stuff everything that I do is on there.
All right. Nico, thank you so much. This was great. And that's a wrap. The episode. We're going to do it again sometime soon. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of The Liquid Lunch Project.